Hey everyone, we're just beginning this journey, so please consider helping us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. Thank you. Now, let's get back to the story. The Tuesday night, air hung thick with the smell of stale, microwave popcorn and the low thrum of the television. I was on the sofa, scrolling through the endless digital wasteland, while Sarah, my wife of 12 years, sat cross-legged on the floor, her eyes glued to her phone, a faint glow illuminating her face. A comfortable silence, I'd always called it. Now, I wondered if it was just silence. My thumb hovered over a clickbait article about celebrity diets when a sudden, sharp snort from Sarah pulled my attention away. "Wow," she said, her voice a little too loud in the quiet room. "You gotta see this. It's on totally viral." I leaned over, peering at the tiny screen. A woman with an intense expression and a perfectly coiffed bun was lecturing into a camera. The caption read, "Bodily autonomy. Your partner doesn't own you." I murmured, not really interested. "Sounds empowering?" "It is," she said, her eyes still fixed on the video. "It's about how, even in a relationship, especially in a long-term one, you don't owe anyone anything. Not your time, not your energy, and definitely not your body." She looked up at me then, her gaze surprisingly direct. "It makes so much sense, John. Total sense." I tried to smile, a polite, non-committal smile. "Right. Freedom and all that." I went back to my scrolling, a faint unease settling in my gut. What was that old saying? When someone shows you who they are, believe them. But Sarah had always been. Sarah. Predictable. Steady. This was a new note in her symphony, and it sounded a little off-key. I was wondering. This couldn't have been just about a video. This was something bigger brewing inside her for a long time. The next morning, the unease solidified into a cold, hard knot. We were sitting at the breakfast table, the clinking of our spoons against ceramic the only sound. I cleared my throat, ready to suggest a weekend hike, something we hadn't done in months. Before I could speak, she placed her spoon down with a definitive clink. "John," she began, her voice calm, almost clinical. "I've been thinking a lot about our talk yesterday, about what it means for me, for us." My heart gave a little thump. Here it came. "I've decided," she continued, not meeting my eyes, instead focusing on a speck of toast crumb on the table, "that I need to reclaim my space, my personal autonomy." She finally looked at me, her expression unreadable. "And that means there won't be any more intimacy between us." The words hit me like a physical blow. Woomph. The air left my lungs. My mind went blank. No more intimacy. Just like that. After 12 years. No discussion. No preamble. Just a statement, delivered with the casualness of a grocery list item. I felt a strange, hollow ache bloom in my chest, expanding rapidly, consuming everything. I stared at her, searching for a flicker of regret, a hint of sadness, anything. There was nothing, just a quiet resolve. "It's my right, John," she added, as if reading my unasked question. "My body, my choice. I don't owe you my body." I couldn't speak. The words were stuck somewhere in my throat, tangled with a sudden, overwhelming sense of betrayal. She told it like intimacy wasn't something we shared, something that made us close, but some kind of weapon I used against her. It broke me. My jaw felt locked. My hands, resting on the table, felt like lead. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. I wanted to scream. I wanted to plead. I wanted to demand an explanation, a reason, anything beyond a viral video. But I didn't. The words, the fight, the very essence of my protest had been knocked clean out of me. I just broke. A little crack deep inside, like an old, forgotten bone finally giving way. I nodded, a minuscule, almost imperceptible dip of my head. Then I pushed my chair back, the scrape of wood on tile a harsh sound, and walked away. That night, I moved my pillow and a spare blanket to the guest room. The bed felt too big, too empty. Sarah didn't object. She didn't even comment. She just hummed a little tune as she folded laundry, a light, airy sound that grated on my raw nerves. Life, for her, seemed to continue as normal. For me, the world had tilted on its axis, and I was trying to find my balance on a rapidly shrinking patch of solid ground. I stopped lingering in the kitchen, stopped asking about her day, and stopped offering to carry the groceries. My replies became monosyllabic. My presence, a ghost. I was there, but I wasn't. In the quiet of the guest room, the silence was deafening. It echoed with the ghosts of 1,000 touches. I remembered her hand in mine, warm and comforting, as we walked through the park on our first date. The soft brush of her hair against my cheek as she whispered secrets in the dark. The lazy Sunday mornings, tangled limbs, and hushed laughter, and the scent of her skin. The way her body had fit against mine, a perfect puzzle piece, a familiar comfort that had been as essential as breathing. Now it was all gone, vanished with one cold, clipped sentence. It wasn't just the physical intimacy I missed. It was the unspoken language of our bodies, the comfort, the vulnerability, and the profound knowing that came from sharing that space and that connection. It was the feeling of being truly seen, truly desired. And now I was invisible, a roommate, less than. The first few weeks were a blur of numb existence. I went to work, came home, ate dinner in silence, and retreated. One evening, staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, I didn't recognize the man staring back. Sunken eyes, a slight slump in my shoulders, a general air of defeat. Ugh, enough. That night, I found my old gym bag in the back of the closet. The next morning before work, I was there. The clanging of weights, the rhythmic thump-thump-thump of treadmills, and the faint scent of sweat and disinfectant. At first, it was just an escape, a place to burn off the restless energy of my grief. I pushed myself harder than I had in years. My muscles screamed, a satisfying burn that drowned out the internal ache. Slowly, something shifted. The exhaustion of a good workout replaced the exhaustion of despair. I started focusing on my work, diving into complex projects, staying late, and finding a new sense of purpose in the grind. My phone screen time plummeted. I swapped endless scrolling for books, for long walks, for quiet contemplation. I was rebuilding one painful rep, one focused hour, and one deliberate breath at a time. People started to notice. "John, you're looking sharper." My coworker, Brenda, commented one morning, her brow furrowed in a pleasant surprise. "Lost some weight." I managed a small smile, just trying to get back in shape. Later that week, my boss, Mr. Henderson, clapped me on the shoulder. "Great job on the Peterson account, John. Really impressed with your focus lately." My posture improved. My shoulders squared. My eyes, I noticed in the mirror, looked clearer, less haunted. I wasn't a ghost anymore. I was a man, slowly, painstakingly, re-emerging from the wreckage. One Saturday, I was nursing a lukewarm coffee at a local cafe, immersed in a novel, when a familiar voice startled me. "John, is that really you?" I looked up. Standing over my table, a wide, easy smile on her face, was Chloe, an old college friend I hadn't seen in years. Her red hair was still a wild, glorious mess, and her eyes sparkled with the same mischievous humor I remembered. "Chloe, wow, it's been forever." I stood up, a genuine smile finally breaking through the quiet reserve I'd cultivated. "Seriously, you look fantastic," she said, her gaze sweeping over me. "What's your secret? Found the fountain of youth, perhaps?" She chuckled, a warm, melodic sound. We talked for hours, the easy banter flowing as if no time had passed. We reminisced about late-night study sessions, terrible college bands, and our shared dreams of conquering the world. She told me about her work as a graphic designer and her chaotic but happy life. I found myself opening up, talking about my job, my gym routine, and even the small, quiet joys I was rediscovering. I didn't mention Sarah, not directly, but the unspoken context of my recent solitude hung in the air. It wasn't romantic, not even close. It was a reconnection to a part of myself I'd forgotten, a reminder of the John who existed before, the one who was more than just a husband. The conversation was a balm, a clear, cool drink after a long, dry march. As the weeks turned into months, the world seemed to shift around me. I noticed it first at the coffee shop. The barista, a woman with bright blue streaks in her hair, lingered a little too long when she handed me my latte. "Here you go," Handsome, she'd say, her smile a little wider than necessary. At work, a new hire, a bubbly woman named Emily, would often find excuses to stop by my desk. One afternoon, as I was explaining a particularly complex spreadsheet, she reached out and lightly touched my forearm, her fingers warm against my skin. "You're so good at this, John," she said, her voice a little breathy. "So smart." I felt the flush rise on my neck. It was a strange, unsettling feeling, this renewed attention. My immediate instinct was to pull away, to put up a wall. I wasn't looking for anything. Not now. Not like this. I smiled politely, kept the conversation professional, and made sure to keep a respectful distance. I wasn't that guy. I wasn't going to betray the vows I'd made, even if they felt like ashes in my mouth. Sarah noticed too. I saw it in the subtle shift of her gaze. At first, it was just a flicker, a quick glance when I walked into a room, a slight narrowing of her eyes. Then it became more overt. She'd watch me across the dinner table, a new, unfamiliar expression on her face, a mix of curiosity and something that looked suspiciously like jealousy. "You're spending a lot of time at the gym lately," she remarked one evening, her voice carefully neutral. "Yeah," I replied, not looking up from my book. "It helps." "You look different lately," she said another time, her tone softer, almost hesitant. I just shrugged, feeling different. The distance between us had become a chasm, and now, for the first time, she seemed to be sensing its true depth. One rainy Saturday, I was in the living room, listening to the rhythmic tap-tap-tap of rain against the window pane. Sarah walked in, her arms wrapped around herself, a nervous tremor in her voice. "John," she began, her voice barely a whisper. "Can we talk?" I put my book down, my heart giving a strange, detached beat. "Sure." She sat on the edge of the sofa, a respectable distance away. I miss you." Her voice cracked a little. "Do you still love me?" The question hung in the air, heavy and loaded. I looked at her, truly looked at her, for the first time in months. The woman who had once been my world. The woman who had, with a single sentence, shattered it. A profound sense of weariness washed over me. The pain was still there, a dull ache, but it no longer consumed me. "I don't know, Sarah," I said, my voice quiet and honest. "I honestly don't know anymore." Her eyes widened, a flicker of something akin to panic in their depths. The next few days, she tried harder. She made my favorite chicken parmesan, the kitchen filling with the comforting aroma of garlic and oregano. She wore that little black dress I'd always loved, the one that made her eyes sparkle. She even put on the perfume I'd bought her years ago, the one that smelled of jasmine and warm summer nights. She tried to initiate small touches, a hand on my arm as I walked by, a lingering gaze. But the damage was done. The wall I had built, brick by painful brick, was solid and impenetrable. I didn't open up. The gestures fell hollow and forced, like a performance. Too little, too late. The emotional well had run dry. One evening, after she tried to engage me in a light-hearted conversation about a new show, and I'd responded with a polite but firm silence, she finally broke. Her voice trembled a raw, exposed sound. "Why are you doing this, John?" she cried, tears welling in her eyes. "Why are you pushing me away?" "I was just exploring myself. My boundaries." I looked at her, my expression calm, almost detached. The anger and the heartbreak had been replaced by a quiet certainty. "Exploring yourself?" I repeated, my voice even. "Sarah, for months, I felt like a roommate, not a husband. You put up a wall, a barrier, and then you acted like everything was normal. Like my feelings, my needs, and my very existence as your partner didn't matter." I paused, letting the words sink in. "You talked about autonomy. But what about partnership? What about connection? What about love?" She stared at me, her mouth slightly agape, the tears now streaming down her face. "You treated me like some kind of villain who was making you do things you didn't want to do. Connection isn't just physical, no," I continued, my voice gaining a quiet strength. "But removing it completely, without love, without empathy, without any discussion, without any attempt to understand what that would do to the other person, that broke something deeper. It wasn't just a boundary you set. It was a bridge you burned. You made me feel like I was disposable, disgusting. Like our shared life, our history was just optional. The silence that followed was absolute. The air crackled with unspoken truths, with years of neglect, with the final, irreversible snap of a cord that had once bound us together. I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. It was over. The pain, the rebuilding, the quiet, solitary journey, it had led me here, to this clarity. The next morning, a thick, manila envelope lay on the kitchen table. The divorce papers, neatly filled out, signed, and ready. Sarah found them when she came down for coffee. She picked them up, her hands trembling, her eyes wide with shock. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. She was speechless. I walked to the front door, my small duffel bag slung over my shoulder. I turned back, looking at her one last time. She stood there, frozen, the papers clutched in her hand. "I wish you peace, Sarah," I said, my voice steady, devoid of anger, devoid of longing. "I truly do." I didn't offer my heart again. It wasn't hers to break anymore. As I stepped out of the house, the old house we had built a life in, the morning sun felt surprisingly warm on my face. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves in the oak tree in the front yard, a soft, whispering sigh. I walked to my car, the key cool in my hand. What made her believe that intimacy was disposable? That love was optional. Could a relationship survive, truly thrive, when one person unilaterally decided to withdraw such a fundamental part of its foundation? I didn't know. I probably never would. But I knew one thing for certain. I would never live half-loved again. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like my own. And that, I realized, was everything.